Talk about Rose and the homeless of Makati and Metro Manila in general. Some more with someone who has actually met them. DSWD Secretary Rex Gatchalian is joining us via Zoom. Good evening to you, Secretary Rex. Welcome to the big story. Thank you for agreeing to come on the show.
Ladies, good evening. Thank you for having me. Good evening to all your televiewers and listeners as well.
How was your encounter with Rose?
Let me just contextualize the story. This is not the first time that I'm meeting people who are living off the streets. You have to remember, my background as city mayor opened my eyes to this problem. Number two, when I assumed the DSWD portfolio, the president's marching order was very simple. Make sure that no Filipino is living in the streets. So as early as 2023, we have been conducting Pag-abot program, which is a reach out program. It's a mainstay in the department. It's not reactionary to anything that happened. Since 2023, we have close to around 100 plus social workers fanning across the metropolis 3 times a day in major thoroughfares, making sure that we reach out to people who are living in the streets. In fact, since the program started, as your report mentioned, we started with an inventory of 10,000 families. Now we're down 10,000 individuals. Now we're down to 5,000. The balance of 5,000, these are people who don't refuse to join us. So what we would do is keep on going back to them, convincing them, because in this template, while we are making sure that they are moving off the streets, we are also recognizing their human rights. Walang pilitan to. We are making sure that this is done in their own volition because we want to make sure that they're comfortable with the decision they're making. And again, as the instruction of the president, we will not stop until Metro Manila's families are not living, or not a single family in Metro Manila is living in the streets. What's very interesting or curious about this, what's peculiar about this story is we were operating in streets, major thoroughfares, highways, flyovers, underpass. But we were caught by surprise that there are some families or individuals living inside the drainage system of our city.
Yes. That's why it's so unusual. That's why it captured the attention of, well, not just social media, but practically everyone, because of, living in the sewer is really, like you said, the life of the poorest of the poor. So, but we know also that the transition from living off the streets to, a more stable home is difficult. It's long. Many just returned back. So how are you, your statistics, you mentioned that it's down to 5,000, but how has that effort been? Enticing them or getting them to know that there is a different kind of life?
It's a multi-pronged question. Let me answer that in two folds. First of all the departments in the country, DSWD has the track record of case management. Our social workers are trained to case manage. It's not when we do get somebody off the streets, we put them into temporary housing, we evaluate what will they need to be able to reintegrate back into their communities. Some will go home to their provinces with economic grants. Some will opt to stay in Metro Manila and we will find them temporary housing or rentals together with economic grants. There's no one size fits all. It really depends on the peculiarity or the nuance of that person's case. But what's important is the follow-up efforts done by our case managers or our social workers. In the case of Rose, let's just talk about Rose. It can be done. She was living off the streets for more than a year ago, but she and her partner decided they wanted out of the streets, so they made ends meet, and they ended up with a rental. They were bed spacing for 2,000 pesos in a month. We looked at the home. It was a decent house, but what is more pressing for her would be a sustainable source of income. That's why the social worker decided to execute a recommendation for an 80,000 peso worth of grant so she can start a store. Now, why is a sari-sari store something that they recommended when we know that it's quite difficult to run a sari-sari store? In the case of Rose, she had the fiscal discipline early on. Imagine mo, they were only making 500 pesos a day, yet they managed to move out of the streets, and end up in a rental worth 2,000 pesos a month. So that means that discipline is there. So we just have to help her set up that store, monitor them so that they don't get back on the street. So basically what I'm trying to say is crucial here will be the role of our social workers. The case management that happens during and after we reintegrate them back into our communities. Now, the second question, how difficult has it been? Very difficult. You have to remember, I was a city mayor, and we know that social welfare is devolved. But we also know that our local government units are strapped with so many responsibilities that they barely have enough resources to do this on their own. That's why the president instructed me to work with the local government units and set up this Pag-abot program. Can you imagine, since 2023, we've managed to profile 10,000 individuals, but only 5,000 came with us. Why? Because other 5,000 would always say, one, they're better off living off the streets because it is something that they know. It is something that they're used to surviving with. It's basically living with what they know rather than the unknown for them. Two, there's that fear that when they join DSWD, this might be hollow promises, or we might just throw them back into shelters perpetually. These are people who actually want to earn a living and want to stand on their own feet. So that's why the silver lining, I guess, of this story is this morning Rose went with us to try to convince people she knew living in the streets. And it actually worked. So this might be a model that we can use in other cities. Try to use proof of concept that the Pag-abot program works, and it's real. It's not just hollow promises of livelihood, but rather real success stories. And baka makumbinsi namin sila. But the bottom line there is we can't stop. The president's instruction has been very clear. No Filipino should be living on the streets, living in flyovers, underpass, more so drainage systems. So we won't stop until all 5,000 in our database are in temporary shelters, permanent shelters, or reintegrated back into their communities with the proper sustainable livelihood programs.
But Secretary, let's go to the bigger picture. Under your watch, poverty has risen based on the SWS survey in March to 52%, and self-rated hunger among the very poor has risen to 35.6%. This despite all your efforts. How would you answer this?
Yes, number one, there are multiple ways. I am not an economist, but if you do ask economists, there are multiple ways of gauging poverty. For SWS, it's self-rated. And we will not dispute that. But also, if we look at the data-driven threshold set by PSA, poverty has actually gone down in the Marcos administration. It is now at 15.5% 15.5% poverty incidence, down from 18%. But sige, let's engage the numbers of SWS. This morning also, we reported that Globe commissioned a study by SWS to gauge the success of our Walang Gutom program, or the President's flagship program, food stamp program, wherein we're giving food poor families. These are families who don't make beyond 9,000 pesos a month, who barely have enough to feed their families, electronic benefit cards that they go to their nearest accredited retailer and they get food credits to shop for carbohydrates, protein, and fiber. And this morning, this study of Globe Telecom, they commissioned SWS, the very same firm that does the quarterly experiential hunger survey, because their surveys are based on experience or self-rated. They use the same questionnaire, and it turns out that in the areas where Walang Gutom operated, hunger incidents went down. Now, kaya namin sabihin, 300,000 Pilipino ang kumakain ng mas maayos at patuloy nang bumababa ang insidente ng kagutuman. Meaning there is a solution, and the President's instruction is to scale this program up as fast as we can so that we can eliminate hunger once and for all. I don't think there has been an administration that has taken a bold step other than the Marcos administration in trying to end hunger once and for all.
We'd appreciate having a copy of that study, Secretary.
Actually, it's all posted already
is it?
In our social media accounts.
Okay.
And this morning, the briefing was conducted by SWS and Globe. And I was just in the side talking about the program. But it's already published. And in fact, next week, we'll also be attending a couple of press cons together with SWS and Globe so that they can be the one to enlighten them and the public on their study that they commissioned.
Okay. Secretary, allow me to circle back to Rose and her story. And this time, the Pag-Abot program. We are familiar with the food stamp program, Walang Gutom, but Pag-Abot is a bit new, at least to my ears. I know it's not new. Rose got 80,000 pesos. Where do we get the funding for this? And how do we determine how much to give? Is it also case to case? And how do we check that indeed tinayo niya yung sari-sari store niya? And, to give her tools and help for her to succeed.
Okay, two things. Both the food stamp program and the Pag-Abot program are innovations of the Marcos administration. These are instructions of the president.
Okay.
The food stamp program is also fairly new. It's the boldest initiative done by any president to end hunger. You can check that. You can fact check me on that. When I talk about hunger, we're talking about involuntary hunger here. There have been programs to solve malnutrition, undernutrition, but there has been no bold initiative directly trying to tackle hunger itself. Number two, Pag-Abot is also fairly new because this is a national government-driven program. It's a mainstay program with a appropriation budget because the president came up with a executive order pushing for the Pag-Abot program. So the Congress gave us the budget to operate the program on a whole year basis, 24/7. We pan across Metro Manila looking for people who are living in the streets. So again, it's financed by the General Appropriations Act. There's a line item there. It's a fairly new line item because the president means business. He said when I joined the department to make sure that no Filipino is living in the streets, he put his money where his mouth is, and that's why we have an appropriation for this program. Now, how do we make sure na sa tama or the money spent rightfully? One, the social workers. I mentioned case management. Social workers are trained to decipher what a family needs or a person needs. Of course, it can't be 100% accurate, but it comes close to that because they look at the background, they look at the nuances of the family, they look at the peculiar needs or challenges of the family. So they are the ones who recommends the amount and what type of intervention or economic intervention we do give. And number three, like I mentioned, there will be constant visits. We have to make sure that these grants go to the right place, as you mentioned. So there's monitoring all the time. In fact, the first spending last night, we did give her the cash. But if you look at the post that we did, the social worker was with her, hand-holding her as she bought the initial stocks for her store. In the coming weeks, in the coming months, if the relationship will not end, we'll make sure that we monitor the success of the Sustainable Livelihood program that we gave her. Also, let me point out that we're also looking at the husband or the partner and trying to empower him to with the right skill set. And that's why we're working with other agencies because in ending poverty, we have to work with other agencies. One agency like DSWD cannot do it alone. So we're working with TESDA to give the partner the right skill set so that we can enter into skills-based employment, welding, the practical ones where his skill set will come in, carpentry, masonry. The goal there, according to the social worker, is to provide a two-income source for the family. They don't have kids. That way, we can make sure that it's sustainable and it's more stable.
Very quickly, Secretary, as a follow-up to those critics who would say that these two programs would just reinforce ayuda culture, what would you have to say to that?
Again, both programs are conditional in nature. The Pag-Abot program has conditions wherein the social worker will do visits. It's pretty much what you see in first world countries. They do case management. You have to show up when the social worker calls you to evaluate how your life has been. So that's a condition by itself. And also, it's not like we're giving them cash. We're making sure that the cash goes to livelihood program, to a livelihood enterprise. In this case, it's a store. And in the husband's case, it won't be cash. It'll be in the form of technical assistance through TESDA so that he gets the right skill set to be able to venture into skilled labor, into the skilled labor market. Now, for Walang Gutom, there's a graduation to it. What is the graduation? Every 2 years, the country conducts a family income and expenditure survey. At the same time, the community-based monitoring system is already in play. Meaning, every 2 years, we get a profile of the families, whether or not they should still be part of the program. Remember, in the Walang Gutom program, there's a work conditionality to it. Now that you're being given food, you'll have enough energy to go out in the workforce. We will require you to show us that you are taking actions or tangible steps into coming into the workforce. Again, DOLE is our partner. They would conduct job fairs for beneficiaries in the coming days. And two, TESDA is also around to provide the necessary skill set so that when we do try to bring them into the workforce, they have the right skill sets. it's a whole of government approach. It's just not one department, but it's multiple departments working in unison to make sure that people get the right skills and that these support, as the president calls them, are temporary in nature. There is a graduation, there are conditions. So it won't breed the culture of mendicancy that everybody's scared of, and so do we. You have to remember the department's name is Social Welfare and Development, and this is the development side of our work.
Okay, but Secretary, just going back to that issue of the underground community, help us understand how deep, how rampant is that problem? Is it just in Makati? I believe Rose was also telling about a story about this other cave near a hospital in Makati where that's where people actually live underground.
Let me clarify. The drain that Rose came out of isn't a drain where people lived in. The story there is she went inside the drainage system because her cutter that she uses for her kalakal or her livelihood or scavenging this enterprise fell into the drainage. So she had to go in and retrieve it. But that drainage is small, narrow, and it's not, people can't go in and out.
Hindi
But
totoong drainage motel daw yun.
Hindi doon yun. Hindi yun, sis.
May iba pa.
Now, ang kwento ni Rose told us, ang pagkakwento niya, meron tinatawag nilang Botanical Garden, which is close to the Makati Medical Center. That's where we went this morning. Sabi niya, doon nakatira kasi yun, mas malaki yung entrada and people actually live there. So this morning, we went there because she pointed out where it is and she knew people living there, but they weren't there. So ang sinabi niya, pagka ganito na nabubulabog, nagpupunta sila sa south, sa Skyway. That's why we ended up going to the Skyway, where that was parang Site B. Whenever they couldn't live in the drain, they would go to the south, to Skyway and live by the side of the flyover. And that's where we managed to convince a couple to join us in our center.
Okay. Secretary, can we assume that the president has not accepted your courtesy resignation?
I don't want to preempt the announcement of the palace. Let's wait for that announcement. But what's very clear with me is that I have to stay in my post, run the department every day so that programs don't stop. So I leave it at that. We cannot preempt the judgment of the president. Like I mentioned in my tweet early on, I serve at the pleasure of the president. I respect whatever his decision will be pertaining to my courtesy resignation. Basta ako, ang instruction to not leave my post unmanned and to make sure that programs are running.
What's it like though? We are on the edge of our seats. I can imagine you know, who has a whole portfolio to manage. What's it like waiting for the verdict?
Because of the job, been up since 4, I think, with your reporters. I just got back and I'm still on to a couple more meetings. Says you barely have time to think anyway about the future. You just have to keep on taking your job seriously. Work is what keeps me preoccupied. Ako, again, when I signed up to join the cabinet, it has always been in the forefront of my mind that I serve at the pleasure of the president. It's a temporary gig it's a temporary job. Sorry, forgive me for using the word gig. It's a temporary job that is hinged on performance. And that's why I appreciate what's happening because it keeps us grounded. It keeps us in the right context that these are positions that are temporary in nature. So you live every day as if it was your last day, and I've been living it like my last day since I joined the cabinet. Sa dami rin ang gagawin, you just have to keep on pushing and powering throughout the day.
One final question, Secretary. It may be heaven sent in a way that the case of Rose showed, allowed you to talk about your programs, etc., etc., because it has been pointed out that the government may be failing in messaging, in telling the people, oh, we're doing this. People don't know. Do you concede that there might be a failure in information?
Says, ladies, I would rather put it this way. Everything we do isn't perfect, even in the department, and there's always room for improvement. And we acknowledge that in everything we do, there will always be room to do it better. I'd like to put it that way. So the silver lining here, I would rather think is we would operate in streets, we would operate in skyways, flyovers, or underpass for the past 3 years. Little did we know that there's a segment of our homeless population living inside the drainage. You have to remember, I've been in public service for 21 years. I used to think that I've seen it all, but the silver lining here is it woke me up this morning that there are people living underneath the road, the very roads where we operate in. And I will not stop. The president's instruction is very clear. I will not stop until we find all these individuals living in, I guess, subterranean levels of our city.
Secretary Gatchalian, thank you so much for your time. We hope this won't be the last time on The Big Story.
Oh, it won't. And I really want to talk to you guys again. There are many programs that we want to share with the general public.
Thank you very much. That was DSWD Secretary Rex Gatchalian.